you own a house or thinking of doing so, or you have a friend or relative who does this program will interest you. We'll be talking about deed theft. About half of the complaints about deed theft are from here in Brooklyn, and this is happening mostly in communities of color. My guest to discuss this is New York State Senator Brian Kavanagh. Senator Kavanagh, welcome to Brooklyn 45.
Thanks for having me.
I know that you have been having these meetings to get first-hand public testimony from victims of deed theft. Tell us a bit about these meetings and how have they been going?
So yeah, we're holding a public hearing where we're looking to hear directly from people who have experienced deed theft, and also from the many authorities and organizations that are working to address the problem. And what we've seen so far is that this is a very serious issue. That deed theft is far too common in spite of some laws that we've passed in recent years that are intended to address it. So we're looking for real solutions to the experience that people have had in recent years. And as you note, particularly Brooklyn has been a hotbed for this activity, and communities of color, and also deed theft is something that disproportionately affects older people as well. So we really are trying to address the problem across the board and come up with real solutions.
What are some of the complaints that you've had?
Deed theft typically happens when a homeowner experiences some distress that causes them to be vulnerable to be targeted by people who intend to try to take possession of their property through fraud or deceit. So they may have had some trouble, falling behind on their taxes or their mortgage. And sometimes that happens because the neighborhood they're living in has become more desirable in recent years. There's been gentrification and prices are going up. So maybe their taxes are going up because the value of properties in their community has been going up. And so they fall behind, and somebody will seek them. They will sort of look for records of people who might be in that situation, and then approach them and try to get them to sign papers that cause the title for their home to be transferred. In many cases, they don't even realize that that is what has occurred until after the person who has taken possession of their home has resold it or mortgaged it again. So it's a very, very serious problem if you find yourself in that circumstance, because you may lose title to your home. You may still have an obligation to pay some debt that had accumulated on the home, even though you no longer own it. And of course, losing your home can lead to very serious consequences for people, including, in some cases, homelessness.
You talk about some of these vulnerable people. Earlier you said seniors. Who else would fall into the category again of being vulnerable?
Yeah, I mean, it does disproportionately affect communities of color. I don't think that's because residents of those communities are especially vulnerable in themselves. I think it's because in our city, it is often the case that communities of color are targets of speculative investment. The prices of homes and property may be low for a long time, and then, as neighborhoods are discovered and the prices go up, real estate investors and speculators look for new neighborhoods. So we've seen neighborhoods where prices have gone up very rapidly, and that can cause in various ways that can destabilize the neighborhood and make individual property owners in those neighborhoods susceptible. So it is the case that we've seen high rates of deed theft in communities of color, and again, particularly in Brooklyn, which of course has become a part of the city where there's been a lot of change in value, a lot of new interest in people moving there in recent years.
Talk a bit about how people can access this information. Where do people go to get this information? Isn't it supposed to be private information?
There are because property records and tax records, and particularly mortgage records, do have some public elements to them, because if I am seeking to borrow money against my property, people need to be able to assess whether there are other debts against that property. So there are public records that people in real estate and real estate finance know how to access. And so once they find out that a particular property owner is experiencing some kind of distress, that makes that property owner often a particularly good target for these kinds of practices. And so, I don't think we're going to solve the problem by keeping that information a secret so much as making sure that, first of all, people are better educated about their options. People should not be signing the papers of somebody who shows up on their doorstep without consulting, professional advice and attorneys. And we also need to find better ways, and we're hoping we'll have this at the public hearing that we're holding, or find better ways to address the problem. I mean, there are criminal charges that can be brought. There have been thousands of these cases and only a relatively small number of criminal charges. But I think from the perspective of somebody who loses title to their home, the bigger question is, how do I regain title? How do I regain my home? Because, criminally prosecuting the person that did that to a homeowner doesn't really, it might give them some sense of justice, but it doesn't give them their home back. So I think that, again, we've enacted, starting in 2006, we started passing laws in New York. There was something called the Home Equity Theft Prevention Act in that year. And then there have been subsequent laws, including as recently as 2019, where we passed laws that were intended to strengthen protections. But clearly this practice is still going on. And so we really want to look into ways we can most effectively address it.
I'm going to ask you to answer your own question. You said the one question is, how do a person regain their title once they have lost it?
Again, it is difficult for an individual homeowner in that circumstance, or a former homeowner who lost title, to regain it directly. They can go to court, they can complain to the Attorney General or to the district attorney, and often those bodies can bring cases. But the current law does not provide a good mechanism for that. So again, that's, we will be back in the legislative session in January. And part of the purpose of this hearing is to determine whether we ought to be passing laws that facilitate someone getting their home back, not just, not just punishing the people that do these really pernicious practices. But, at this point, there are many thousands of people who've lost title to their home and have not received that that kind of response from government, and have not regained title. And so that's it's an enormous problem. It's a real tragedy when it happens. But these people are victims of a very pernicious crime, and it is a crime that we ought to be trying to undo whenever possible.
How many deeds have been stolen? Do you have those figures?
I don't think there's entirely reliable information, because people might be complaining to different authorities. But since 2014, the city of New York has received nearly 3,500 complaints of deed theft. The Attorney General also receives many complaints. And so, maybe several complaints a week at this point right now as we're speaking. So those are, if you think of each of those as someone losing possession of their property unjustly and illegally, that's a very significant, it's a very significant number in my view. So really, this has been, a widespread problem. It's had tremendous negative, tragic results for a lot of people. And that's why we're, hosting a public hearing to hear from those people, and also to hear from the authorities who are attempting to use the laws available, and see if there are other laws that we ought to be putting in place to make sure that the enforcement authorities have the proper tools to address the problem properly.
How can people participate in these hearings?
The hearing will be in person in Lower Manhattan at 250 Broadway, which is just across the street from City Hall. The hearing that we have scheduled now is on October 27th. By the time people are watching this, the hearing may have occurred, but it will be available on the New York State Senate website at nysenate.gov. So people who are interested in this problem can go view the testimony from themselves and the questions that we'll be asking of the witnesses. And again, we expect that this is going to be an ongoing work of our committee, and we may schedule additional hearings, so people should look out for that. And you can sign up for information from the Senate Housing Committee by emailing my office or me directly at Kavanagh@nysenate.gov, Kavanagh @nysenate.gov. And we would, put people on the list and share information about future hearings that we'll be having.
Are there signs that sets off a trigger, sets off an alarm that someone is trying to steal your deed?
Yeah, I would say anytime you have someone coming to you unsolicited and telling you, I'm here to help you. I understand this is difficult, and if you sign these papers, I will take care of the problem. I think you should be suspicious. You should basically never sign agreements like that without consulting somebody, ideally an attorney, but somebody who is knowledgeable about what those papers say. If somebody is giving you a hard sell and saying, we really need to resolve this today because, terrible things are going to happen by next week if you don't sign these papers, you should not sign those papers. That's a lot. In most cases, deed theft occurs because someone is signing papers that they are not aware that those papers indicate that their home the title of their home is being transferred to another person. In some cases, they may understand that the title is being transferred, but expect that they're being compensated in ways that they're not being compensated. They may think that the person is taking title to their home, but going to take care of all of their debts and give them money for their home. But the papers don't say that. And so they don't get money. They still have the debt, but they no longer have their home. So people should be, anyone listening, and if you know someone who might be vulnerable, if you know someone who's going through hard economic times who owns a home, you might want to check in with them and make sure they're aware that there are people out there that are trying to take advantage of them.
Well, people are listening. We've got 350,000 viewers, and a lot of viewers in Brooklyn are homeowners. Yes. And these homeowners could be immigrants as well. Talk about the immigrant ownership of homes.
Yeah, and it's really important. For many years, we sometimes call it the American dream, and the American dream has a lot of aspects. People, getting good jobs and taking care of their families, but homeownership has always been a key part of that. So many people come to this country with the hope of purchasing a home. Many people succeed in doing that, but as economic, as we go through ups and downs of the economy, some people fall behind. I did mention before that we've talked about people of color being vulnerable. We've talked about older people being vulnerable to this, but immigrants often are also targets of this because there may be barriers in the language. You're being asked to sign papers that are not in your native language. People who are immigrants may have, it's hard to generalize, but they may have fewer contacts with, authorities that could help them sort out what's going on. So again, people who are, who are immigrants should know that there may be people also targeting you because of the community you live in. And again, we don't want people to be paranoid, but we do want people to be careful and thoughtful about their situation and to seek advice from legal service providers, seek advice from your local elected officials. You have many great elected officials in Brooklyn who represent your communities. So reach out and get advice before you find yourself signing any papers.
There's an elected official who refers to this deed theft as a theft of someone's spirit. You've been in politics a long time. How do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it can have a really profound effect. I mean, we really do value our homes in ways that go beyond the cash value. I think losing your home, and especially getting swindled out of your home. If you lost your home because the economy turned down and you lost your job and you weren't able to pay the mortgage, that's bad enough. But when you lose your home because someone tricks you into signing papers and taking from you, I think it really can be very devastating for people. It's very hard for people to recover economically, but I think it is very hard also for people to recover from that emotionally, and yeah, I think spiritually is a good word for that. Again, we're very concerned about it. I'm working closely with other senators from Brooklyn, including Senator Zelma Myrie and Senator Jabari Brisport and Senator Julia Salazar, all of whom represent communities where this practice has been prevalent. And so we are really working hard. We understand the pain and the suffering that this has caused many people, and we really are trying to find ways to address that are commensurate with the very serious the seriousness of this.
Real estate is at a high. Is this somewhat contributing to the deed theft that we are hearing so much about these days?
Yeah, I would say it's a combination. I think that ups and downs in the market tend to cause people to some fraction of property owners to experience instability. And so if prices are going up in your neighborhood and that is causing your taxes to go up, that might be a problem. You may have a mortgage where the interest rate varies over time. We've seen interest rates go up recently for various reasons. That may cause you greater distress. So at the same time, maybe a period where your property is losing value may cause you to think, you need to do something different. You need help. And so these people are preying on property owners who get a feeling that they're in a crisis, they're struggling, and what these people offer them is relief. They offer them promises that they're going to take care of things, but those promises are false and the relief is false, and the result is that people become victim and often lose title to their own property.
Who are these people really? Are these ordinary folk trying to get a house without without paying for it? Are these real estate agents? We call them in our communities real estate agents. Are these large real estate corporations? Who are these people that are trying to defraud others out of their properties?
Yeah, I don't think generally speaking, they're large, well-established companies that are initiating the process, although there has been some news coverage of some people who have, it seems, taken possession of a lot of people's property through fraud and deceit, and in fact have become very wealthy as a result of that. But I would say the broader real estate and banking industry participates in this because often what happens is somebody takes title fraudulently and then quickly turns the title over to somebody else who is purchasing it. And that makes it harder, of course, to address the problem because the person who took the title is no longer holding it. So the person who engaged in the fraudulent behavior and made the assertions to the property owner that caused them to turn over their title has then sold it to somebody else who may sell it to a third party and so on. So I think that the real estate industry and the banking industry needs to take more responsibility for working with government officials, working with communities to address this problem to make sure it's not happening.
What is the role of the city registrar's office in ensuring that this does not happen?
So we mentioned before that property records are public. That's how you ensure that you can determine who owns a piece of property before you buy it. You can determine what debts are on property. So there are various record keepers. The city registrar's office, which operates as part of the city Department of Finance, plays an important role here in that they are the entity that is registering changes in title, transfers of title. They will be testifying at our hearing tomorrow, and we're looking forward to hearing their perspective on what more they can do and what they've done so far to try to address this. I think that, to some extent, they will say if somebody brings paperwork to them that appears to be in order and signed by the homeowners, that it is their role to register that paperwork. But again, all participants in this in the industry, including the government participants, should be working with us to find better answers than that, to just say we're all doing our jobs. And that includes, the Attorney General's office and the District Attorney's office, all of whom will be offering their perspective on how we can make the laws better and how we can combat this problem. So it's a problem, I think the Registrar's office and all of the government agencies that play a role in this may not be creating the problem, but I think we all have to work together to find better solutions.
Okay, you are chairman of the Committee on Housing, Construction, and Development. Tell our viewers a bit more about this committee.
So we are a committee of the state Senate. We have statewide jurisdiction over those areas: housing, construction, and community development. That includes the state's programs to develop new housing, especially affordable housing. It includes the laws that protect tenants through rent stabilization and laws to prevent people from being evicted. But it also includes, as a very significant part of work we do, protecting homeowners. That means the programs that are intended to support homeowners, to subsidize renovations and provide assistance, and also programs like the Homeowner Protection Program, which are intended to make sure people have good advice if they are facing foreclosure, either tax foreclosure or mortgage foreclosure. So again, that program funds organizations in every county, including Brooklyn, to make sure that people have good advice if they're seeking the situation. So the committee is responsible for all those things, and we're using the committee to investigate the situation, to hear testimony, to make that testimony public, and hopefully come up with some better answers to how we can address this problem.
So if people have the fear that someone is going to steal their home, they should approach your committee.
I would say the committee, but also I mentioned before, your local elected officials also can connect you with the resources that are available in your community. So we're statewide; we have statewide jurisdiction. But if you go online and you go to Who Represents Me NYC, you just Google that, you will get a website that will tell you who your city council member is, who your assembly member is, who your senator is, and each of those offices should be able to connect you with lawyers that are available to help people in distress, and or other organizations besides legal service organizations as well, that provide assistance to people, that provide advice, and will give you a perspective about what's going on. And again, it is never a good idea to sign papers offered to you by a stranger, certainly without getting some good advice. So I would encourage people who are in that situation to reach out to their elected officials. Obviously, if you know community organizations in your community that are available to help homeowners or tenants, reaching out to them would be a good idea as well. But there are a lot of resources out there. We want to make sure that people are availing themselves of it, of those resources. But the fact is that, notwithstanding all of that, we've seen a lot of deed theft. We don't expect that having a hearing is going to end deed theft. So we're also looking for steps that we can do to strengthen the law. And, there may be other policy solutions that don't involve passing new laws as well. So we'll be exploring those.
We hear a lot about public auctions every now and again. What are the warning signs that people should be aware of, at least when they attend these public auctions?
I'm not sure. I guess you're less likely to be a victim if you are a purchaser at a public auction. I mean, the party losing out when there's a public auction is often the prior owner of the home. But I would say if you're purchasing real estate, you should take some responsibility for making sure that the transaction that got the title into the possession of the person who's trying to sell it to you is legitimate. So I think that, again, I think that people in the industry who are purchasers have an obligation to, to join us in tackling this issue. But I think that, the common situation where somebody becomes a victim of this crime is the situation where they are experiencing distress. They own a piece of property. They may be feel isolated and not have the help they need or the, advice they need. And some person is scamming them, taking advantage of that situation and getting them to sign papers and take other steps that they shouldn't be taking.
We've got about a minute left. I'm going to leave it to you now to talk about steps to prevent yourself from being defrauded. I know that you'll be discussing this a lot during your hearings.
Right. Again, and the most basic thing is do not sign papers related to your property unless you fully understand them. If they are complicated, which they likely are, if they relate to your home, seek good advice. Talk to an attorney if at all possible. Talk to legal service organizations and community organizations that have expertise in this. And don't sign papers that may be jeopardizing your title, or you may be signing away other rights as well. And then I think if you're concerned about this problem, if your community is concerned about this problem, you should join us in pushing for legislative and policy changes for a more proactive response from our government agencies, including our enforcement agencies, so that we can make deed theft a thing of the past, something that people don't continue to practice because they can't benefit from it because they know they're going to get caught, and we're going to respond effectively to the problem. But there are a lot of aspects to this. We are just very actively beginning this process of reviewing it and coming up with solutions. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak with it on your program tonight.
Okay, New York State Senator Brian Kavanagh, thank you for being on Brooklyn 45, and thank you for the information that you provided.
Thank you.
And we want to thank you for watching this program. We are a 501c3 not-for-profit community television program. And when you support us, you benefit as well, of your taxes, of course. Our communities benefit from the information we provide. So please tell everyone you know about us. Brooklyn 45. On behalf of our team, I'm Sam Taitt.
Brooklyn 45 is a 501c3 not-for-profit, and we welcome your support. Check out our website, brooklyn45.com, and feel free to donate or share it with your friends and family. Have any comments or questions? Send them to our Facebook, facebook.com/Brooklyn45TV. If you have any questions or topics you think we should cover next, shoot me an email over at brooklyn45tv@gmail.com. Thank you again for watching.